Well, Chair and friends, as Abby has said, it wasn't gold, but Abby, it's gold to me. And thank you so much for the award. It's a great honour indeed to be the first recipient of the Moritz Coppieters Award, and I know that it'll be one which is highly regarded and valued across the European continent in times to come. You haven't mentioned whether I have to return it next year. I do. Well, there's the triumph of hope over experience, ladies and gentlemen. But I am deeply honoured, and can I thank the introductions you've had to this speech. I have to say, Ms Ahmed Sheikh, the Member of Parliament for Oakhill and South Perthshire, Tasmina often addresses me at Burns Suppers, Scotland's national poet, Robert Burns. And we have a ritual in a Burns Supper where one of the speakers, if they're unfortunate enough, and I have been in that position, does a toast to the lassies. And then there's a reply from the lassies, from the women, where the speakers get mercilessly ripped apart by the women replying to the toast. Tasmina has done that to me. So, Tasmina, I was so surprised this evening to find that you used none of the jokes that you've used previously about me. But thank you so much for your kind words. Daniel, you spoke about my perseverance. You might have added audace, toujours l'audace, because that is something we should all learn as we're moving forward to establish our position in a European home. And Marta, you gave us an ample demonstration that while all politicians are subject to the fall, only the brave politicians get back up again and demonstrate. Marta, I don't know what you do to the Spanish government, but by God, you impress me. And if I could also say to the chair, I'd be delighted with the events of the day and the sequence of, and so delighted to meet so many old friends. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in my estimation, there have been two fundamental shocks in European history in the last 1,000 years. The first was Leicester City winning the English Premier League last season. And the second was in 1297, when a ragtag and bobtail army of Scottish peasants laid low the might of Plantagenet chivalry in the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Many of you may have seen it in the film Braveheart, where it was well depicted. I should say, and given where I am, and given that the Minister-President was so kind in his introductions, that victory of Sir William Wallace was not unique. The Flemish peasants did exactly the same to the might of French chivalry a handful of years later at Courtrai. However, there is no doubt that the Battle of Stirling Bridge was a significant surprise. It was a turn-up for the book, and the reverberations of that battle whistled round medieval Europe. Now, rather like Leicester City, Sir William Wallace, the Scottish commander, came down to earth with a bump the following season at Falkirk. However, in the meantime, how do you think he and his co-guardian of Scotland, Andrew de Murray, celebrated and notified their historic victory? I can see you all thinking that a giant Scottish ceilidh was the order of the day. Well, what they actually did as their first act of state was they wrote a letter to Lubeck, then the headquarters of the Hanseatic League. And here I freely paraphrase from the Latin text, which said, "There has been a change. We are back in charge. Could we have our trading concessions back? And be nice to the two merchants who are bearing this letter." Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Hanseatic League was the medieval equivalent of the single marketplace. And that Lubeck letter is the equivalent of the Scottish First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, saying to the European Commission, look, we don't much like the idea of full English Brexit. We didn't vote for it, we're not having it, and we're hoping to be in charge soon. Now, wind the clock of European history forward some 450 years. And we find a Scots gentleman bored out of his mind tutoring a young Scots nobleman, writing from Toulouse in France to a friend saying he was about to start a new book. Indeed, I have a facsimile, a digitalized version of that very letter in my hand at the present moment from 1764. That bored Scot was Adam Smith. His friend was David Hume, and the book was The Wealth of Nations, the foundation text of modern economics. Now, the point I'm making is that the 18th century Scotland was at the centre of the development of European thought, and the age of rationality, represented by the Scottish Enlightenment, ushered in, among other things, many other things, the modern age and the French and American revolutions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, more somberly, if we wind that clock forward another century and a half, we find that Scotland, like so many other nations, was engaged in European conflict. And 100 years ago, in the Great War, the losses of Scotland as a percentage of our population, many of these losses in Flanders Field, from the carnage of that war, are only matched by those of Germany and France. There are villages in the northeast and the Highlands of Scotland where what took place was not a decimation, a 1 in 10 loss, but of young men of fighting age, no less than half were killed or seriously injured in the Great War. And therefore, for us, for Scots, more than most, we have a huge interest in the peace to which the European Union has contributed over these last 65 years. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of these three quite separate stories is to emphasize that Scotland for a millennium has been a European country. In trade and culture and scientific advance and development, in peace and in war, Scotland has been at the heart of Europe. Therefore, to be told now, against the wishes of the Scottish people, that these connections are to be severed, that we're be to reduce to the role of, at best, a bystander, is not just democratically unacceptable, it flies in the face of our history. And it should not just be unacceptable to Scotland, it should be unacceptable to all of Europe. There are many, many negative things about the Brexit process. It will be intensely damaging to the United Kingdom. Brexit offers nothing but salt and vinegar, as President Tusk memorably put it. However, one of its worst aspects is how the time and effort of Europe will be preoccupied in dismantling part of the European project. What a waste, when Europe's eyes should be on the challenges of the present and of the future. Europe should be galvanizing to repair the weaknesses in our project, a project which Robert Schuman pointed out 66 years ago will not be made at once or in any single plan. However, there is an aspect of Scotland's story which should bring hope to the rest of this continent. We hear a great deal, an enormous amount, about how the established order is under siege everywhere from the forces of right-wing populism, how liberal values, progressive politics, respect for judiciary are on the retreat across Europe and indeed across the planet. However, in Scotland, it is a progressive, pro-European force who are in the ascendancy, that the protest against the establishment is expressed in liberal values, that the European Union, for all its faults, is regarded as a positive thing. As President Juncker said himself, Scotland has earned the right to be heard in Europe. And as he said and added to that this afternoon in a meeting with me, and has the right to be listened to in Brussels. Now, Scotland is not unique in this. In a number of countries, many represented here, it's emerged from the autonomous left. And yet, to that enthusiasm, to that grassroots movement in so many nations, how have European institutions responded? The answer is not well. When the reactionary vandals are at the very gates of the Treaty of Rome, then help from all progressive Europeans should be treasured and valued, not dismissed. We need a Europe where dissent is channeled into fresh hope. We need to lift again the tattered flag of a social Europe. We need to fuel once again the idealistic vision that propelled Moritz Coppieters himself. And that vision was, in his words, where self-determination of people's linguistic and cultural diversity, peace and democracy can find a home in a united Europe. In the coming weeks, in a very short space of time, the Government of Scotland will be publishing a paper on Scotland's way forward, how we can maintain our European connections, how the UK even could accommodate this without countermanding the Brexit process across England. What we need now from the rest of this continent is not just goodwill and encouragement. We need vocal support and the realisation that we have to act together to turn the tide away from all that Brexit represents if we are to build a European home with room for all its nationalities. Or as Hamish Henderson, the Scots poet and songwriter, once put it in his great anthem, Freedom Come All Ye. So come all ye at hame with freedom, ne'er heed what the hoodies croak for doom. In your house all the bairns of Adam can find breed, barley brie and painted room. Thank you very much.